The life of Elijah, God's faithfulness through every season. The life of Elijah stands as one of the clearest demonstrations that the Lord faithfully accomplishes his purpose through those who trust him. Elijah ministered during one of the darkest periods in Israel's history, when King Ahab and Queen Jezebel had led the nation into widespread idolatry. Although outward circumstances appeared hopeless, God was never absent, nor was his covenant purpose in jeopardy. Elijah first appears in Scripture with a bold declaration that there would be no rain except by the word of the Lord, 1 Kings 17, verse 1. The drought was not merely a punishment. It was God's testimony against the false god Baal, who was believed to control storms and fertility. The Lord revealed that he alone governs creation. Every event unfolded according to his sovereign purpose. After delivering God's message, Elijah was sent to the brook Cherith. There, God sustained him with water from the brook and food brought by ravens. Human reasoning would never have designed such a provision, yet God's care often comes in unexpected ways. The same God who commands the heavens also provides for his servants. Elijah's security rested not in favorable circumstances, but in the faithfulness of God. When the brook dried up, the Lord directed Elijah to a widow in Zarephath. She possessed only enough flour and oil for one final meal before expecting death. Yet God multiplied her provision day after day. The widow discovered that the Lord's resources are never exhausted. Even when circumstances appear empty, God's grace is abundant and sufficient. While Elijah stayed with the widow, her son became ill and died. Elijah cried out to God, and the child was restored to life. This miracle revealed that the Lord possesses authority not only over famine, but also over death itself. Throughout Scripture, life belongs to God, and his power reaches where human ability ends. The defining moment of Elijah's ministry came on Mount Carmel. Hundreds of prophets of Baal gathered to call upon their God, while Elijah stood alone before the nation. Baal remained silent because he had no power to answer. Elijah prayed to the living God, and fire fell from heaven, consuming the sacrifice, the altar, the stones, and even the water surrounding it. The people confessed, "The Lord, he is God." This event reminds us that truth does not depend upon majority opinion. God remains faithful whether many believe or few believe. His word never requires human approval to be true. After this great victory, Elijah experienced profound discouragement. Threatened by Jezebel, he fled into the wilderness and asked that his life might end. Even faithful servants may grow weary. Yet the Lord did not abandon Elijah in his weakness. God provided food, rest, and gentle correction before recommissioning him for further ministry. At Mount Horeb, Elijah witnessed wind, an earthquake, and fire, but the Lord revealed himself through a gentle whisper. God's work is not always accomplished through dramatic displays. Often, he quietly accomplishes his purpose according to his perfect wisdom and timing. Elijah believed he alone remained faithful, but God revealed that 7,000 in Israel had not bowed to Baal. The Lord's people have always been preserved by his faithfulness rather than by human strength. God's covenant purposes never depend upon the visibility of his work. Even when his people cannot see what he is doing, he continues to accomplish his plan. God then instructed Elijah to anoint Elisha as his successor. Elijah's ministry was never about personal greatness, but about God's continuing work. The Lord raises one servant after another, while his eternal purpose remains unchanged. No individual carries God's kingdom alone. Near the close of Elijah's earthly ministry, he crossed the Jordan with Elisha. Suddenly, a chariot and horses of fire appeared, and Elijah was taken into heaven by a whirlwind. Unlike many others, Elijah did not experience death in the ordinary way. His departure testified that God is Lord over life itself, and that his servants ultimately belong to him. Centuries later, Elijah appeared with Moses during the transfiguration of Jesus. The law and the prophets bore witness to Christ, in whom all of God's promises find their fulfillment. Everything Elijah proclaimed pointed ultimately to the finished work of the Messiah. The life of Elijah continually directs our attention away from human performance and toward God's faithfulness. Elijah experienced victories, fears, miracles, loneliness, provision, correction, and restoration. Through every season, the Lord remained constant. His covenant faithfulness never failed. The completed work of Christ reveals the fullness of God's saving purpose. Through his death and resurrection, the promises anticipated throughout the Old Testament have reached their fulfillment. Believers stand before God accepted, forgiven, and made righteous because of Christ alone. Our confidence rests not in our ability to maintain God's favor, but in the sufficiency of the one who has accomplished redemption forever. Elijah's life encourages us to trust the Lord, who rules history, fulfills his promises, provides for his people, and completes everything he has purposed. The God who sustained Elijah remains the same today. His grace is sufficient, his promises are certain, and his finished work provides an unshakable foundation for all who believe.